Ladies and gentlemen, it's your guy Seth Guru Baxter with Make a Spur, and welcome back to my program. I'm extremely pleased to ask the question again. Today's man is on a journey, and the journey is partially to find a community that we once understood clear language about and where we belonged. Through the last few years, there's definitely been an attack, and some might not call it an attack, but there has been some confusion as far as how to engage in conversations that are positive and create an environment for men to speak and support one another. Today's guest, Matty McManus, is one of those leaders in this conversation piece, and he has come up with Gent's journey, which we're going to get into a little further today. But with that, the conversation continues. Today's man and masculinity, and where is it? What do we do? And here's one of those places where we provide opportunity for support. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us today on Megaspar. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. And I really appreciate being here. You know, this is a topic that I find fascinating insofar as I've co-created a brand, a company, an idea, and an ethos around this conversation, using the word conversation as kind of the through line.
The through line, explain the through line a little bit.
So I'm in my mid 40s. My father is 70 years old, and he is a stoic man, a funny man, but a man that I would say was never altogether that emotional. If he was emotional, it was every once in a while, and it was when he was angry. That's when I would see the most. That was the primary emotion. He wasn't in general an angry person, but I think that he reduced or hid or was taught by his father and his peer group as a young man in the 70s to kind of circumvent the idea of sharing not just your pain, but even your joy. And I think that sharing your joy with another man is a wonderful thing. But think about that sentence, sharing your joy with another man. When was the last time you heard a guy at a bar or a guy at a Dodgers game or outside of a Home Depot saying, "Man, I had a great weekend. I shared some joy with some dudes." You know, like that doesn't sound like a sentence you would hear that frequently. You would hear, "I got a couple of beers with Jimmy," or I barbecued with Steve. But did you talk about anything? Did you ask each other, not just how are you doing? I think the more important question is, how are you really doing? And go for it.
Please finish.
I had that realization in an elevator, the elevator in my building that I'm sitting in right now. I got into it during the pandemic, and I saw a look on a neighbor's face, a neighbor I didn't know that well. He lived on a different floor than I do in this big building that I live in. And I could just see a look on his face that he had something to share. And I asked him how he was doing, and he sighed, and he said, "I'm okay." And then he sighed again, and I looked at him. I was like, "How you really doing, buddy?" And he hesitated a little bit right off the bat, but I let him know that he could tell me what was going on. And he still hesitated, but by the time we got to the top floor, which wasn't my floor, it was his floor, he's like, "You want to take a walk?" And I was like, "Sure." So we took a walk around the block, and he was just having, girlfriend troubles. He was talking about how his parents got divorced when he was a kid. He was never really taught how to be in a successful relationship, and he was just trying to figure out his current romantic life. Now, that's a great conversation, kind of should be a commonplace conversation, but I think that men are taught not to share those fears with one another, unless, you have a best friend that you talk to all the time, et cetera, et cetera. But to strangers, And it's not just about the strife that we go through. So it was around that time during the pandemic that a friend of mine, who is a successful marketing agency owner, and three of his friends that he knew from various places in his experience that were successful in their own arenas, were meeting every other Monday. And they were talking about entrepreneurship because they were all successful entrepreneurs, but they were also fathers and they were middle-aged men. And they were talking about their businesses at first, but then the conversations kind of turned into something slightly more serious, which is when my friend addressed me. He's like, I'm doing this meeting, Matt, every other Monday, and I really think you would be an asset in this meeting. And he explained that he was an entrepreneur and that all the other guys were. I was like, honestly, I'm just kind of an entertainment professional. I'm an actor. I've been doing it since I was 7 years old. And I've worked in entertainment in various capacities and in various disciplines that whole time. But he said, I've known you for a long time. You've had a really interesting life. And I think that you could add something to this conversation. There's that word again. And so I started talking to these men every other week. And these conversations were life-changing. And some of them started so simply. One of the conversations was about fatherhood and also about our fathers and how we were raised. And I think we started uncovering some truths, some real important truths that we were brought up by men that taught us not to share, but they didn't really talk about sharing that frequently. And so after about 3 years of these men and I speaking every other Monday, we realized we had something on our hands. We didn't know what to do with it. We didn't know what to do with it right off the bat. But then we came to the conclusion that we should reduce every one of those conversations that were recorded down to their rarest form, which was a question, and get that question printed on a card, make 52 of those cards. And then ultimately we arrived at what we call the journey deck, which is right here. These are 52.
And I want to get to that. Before
Yeah.
we do that, if you don't mind, Matt, I want to read one of the things I loved about the promo of that. MakerSpar is on a mission to create 1 million leaders today for tomorrow. And you're on a similar path. And your mission statement to help men unlock the same magic we did when we started Gents' journey, helping you and your crew become the best version of yourselves. And one of the reasons why that stuck out to me, I have a group of buddies that we've known each other 28, 29 years. And the most important element of our relationships were conversation, that we were going to stick to this thing to converse with one another, to be there for one another. And it wasn't very much, we were aware that outside of us, the world didn't support men conversing in a way that was supportive in a vulnerable and expressive manner. And it didn't mean crying tears all the time, but it didn't mean you couldn't. It just meant conversation. And that's one of the elements that struck me about not only the Gents cards, but your mission statement. And then I want to add that there is this complexity that seems to be around the conversation of men's joy. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that. It was a few months ago, I saw this trending video that a dude had posted, and it was about men frolicking. And I found the most fascinating conversations around that, because a majority of people could not get that men could just express joy with one another without having undertones of sexual ambiguity and or other things. And they just were confused because of the last few years where men were saying we support one another, and frolicking was just this moment where men were sharing joy with each other. And I think, considering the time since the last election and where men have been at the last couple of decades, we have this resurgence of men discovering conversations where we can discover frolicking and sharing joy is also about brotherhood, and masculinity is supporting one another. And I think that's one of the fascinating aspects of what your company is doing. So if you wouldn't mind share with us a little bit more about men and conversation around joy.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a video recently where someone asked, how do you know if someone is your true friend? And the other person answered, pay attention to how people react when you win, when you have a W. I'm blessed with the kind of friends that I can't wait. I can't wait to tell them about a W of mine. Because they know how hard I work, and I also know how hard my friends work. So I jump at the chance to tell my friends when I have a win, and I look forward to the wins that my friends have. And I think that there's something to be said for that. I think that men are in a silent competition from day one. Being a man is really hard. It's hard.
Yes.
It is.
It really is. It really is. And I don't think that we get enough credit these days.
No. And I'm not saying women don't work hard. Look, they birth children.
For sure.
Women are magic beings that we could not exist without. They are in a lot of ways more important than us. They're infinitely important. But I will say this. You go to a Barnes and Noble and you look up all of the literature for expecting mothers, there's an aisle of it. There's one book, maybe two. It's called The Expectant Father. And the same goes for women's mental health in general. If you go to a mental health aisle in a bookstore or a library, it's mostly catered towards women. Even just like the branding for the books themselves, the colors they use, the words that they use to promote these things. And there's a rapper by the name of Russ, and he's young and he's really
I know Russ. I'm familiar.
Yeah,
he's a good character.
He's a good rapper. I'm going to misquote. I'm going to paraphrase this lyric. He said, when you show a woman your tears, that's unattractive. But if there's a tear on your cheek, meaning if there's a tattoo of a tear on your cheek, they get attracted to that. I'm misquoting entirely, but there's what he's trying to say is the tattoo of the tear represents a certain level of strength, that you've gone through some really, really difficult things in your life. But when you actually cry, it's frowned upon, pun intended. And I think the stoic nature of the way that we've been brought up, the stuff that we've seen, look at, the TV show Mad Men, for example, that stoic American person that we are told to be. Don't open your mouth and share what's going on in your world. Just exist and keep your feelings at bay, and that's, I believe, why you see a sub-pandemic of male loneliness. And I think that was kind of the crux of the whole thing. We realized
the male loneliness aspect.
Yeah. I think that there's just a lot of dudes out there that feel lonely. And you would go to middle America and you hear guys probably say, I'm not lonely. I got Jerry at the bar. I got my wife. I can talk to them. Being in close proximity to people, having people around you doesn't make you less lonely. Sharing a story makes you feel less lonely. And sharing your joy as a man is something you should 100% do, because it's a marker in the sand. It means that the moment and yourself need to be celebrated. And you should make note of the fact that you are achieving the things that you set out to do, rather than just achieving and achieving and achieving and achieving. In between all of my success, I have a lot of bullet points of success in my professional career, but between those bullet points are large chunks of time of just really grinding, really putting one foot in front of the other, believing in the unbelievable. And I wouldn't be this far without my male friends. I have 2 or 3 dudes that I talk to daily. Women that I've dated think I'm so silly. I'm like, they're like, you really talk to Jimmy every single day? I'm like, yeah, if I didn't. You really talk to James every single day? Yeah, I'd be nothing if I couldn't. The support that my male friends give me every day is the gasoline in the car of my life, without a doubt. And friendship,
sure.
friendship, the word friendship, quite literally, is my favorite word. And okay, here's the thing. Here's the real thing. Media teaches us a couple of things, but early childhood media teaches us some really important stuff that we tend to forget as adults. You watch any Disney movie, any single Disney movie, you're going to find an animal, a person, or an inanimate object that can talk, right? That's the main character. Inevitably, that character is going to be faced with a problem. The lion cub needs to realize that he's the king, so he needs to meet a warthog and Timon and Pumbaa. The robot needs to meet someone so they can get off the island. There's every single Disney movie, every single cartoon presents a character with a problem, and the antidote to that problem in every single one of those stories is a friend, right? And so if there is a problem with men making friends in their middle ages, in America, in the world, there needs to be a solution, right? You can't, because how I used to make friends as a kid by knocking on doors when I moved to a new town and saying, hey, you want to be my buddy? Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But it's hard to do that now, especially if you have a career, a job, a family, a dream. I live in a major we both live in major metropolitan cities.
Yes.
These towns go by so fast. And they say stop and smell the flowers. And the flowers really need to be stop and talk about what's going on so you can understand how beautiful your life actually is. Because life's wonderful. But it's only truly experienced amongst friends. And if you don't have friends, we have something. If you don't have a lot of friends, if some of your old friendships need some strengthening, and if you'd like to make some new friends, we just created an inanimate object that you can keep on your person. So if you're at a party and you don't know anybody, you pull out one of these cards. My favorite card in this deck is the question, what is your favorite sandwich? And you might think on the surface, that's just a regular kind of question. But the reality is this: you ask someone what their favorite sandwich is, they definitely have an answer. You find out where they grew up very quickly, if they have any dietary restrictions, what they actually think a sandwich is a cheeseburger a sandwich? Then the debate starts. Then the three dudes behind you hear the conversation about sandwiches. They walk over. There's five guys talking about sandwiches. And before you know it, you know where the coolest sandwiches are in the city that you're living in is. You know where the coolest sandwiches in Chicago are. You know where the coolest sandwiches in Tampa are. And before you know it, you have friends that you didn't have before because you learned so much about those people. And I'll end the sandwich moment with just saying this. I approached a man on a bench in West Hollywood on a random Sunday, and I said, do you want to play this game with me? He said, sure. And he took the sandwich card, and he took a pause, and he said, Matt, why did you ask me this? And I said, no, you picked the card. I didn't know that you were going to pick that card. He's like, no, but this is a little strange. And I said, why? He said, well, every Sunday for the last 20 years, I got the same sandwich with my brother who passed away a week ago. Wow. And I'm sitting here on this bench on a Sunday, the first Sunday after his passing, and I'm debating if I go get that sandwich or not.
Wow.
And so a question about sandwiches can really help you heal, is what I'm saying. So and we really need to heal. I'll tell you what, we all went through a collective trauma that we're not talking about because no one wants to, because it was hard, which was the pandemic. We went through a collective trauma, and then it was over. We took the masks off, and then we were left looking at our reflection again wholeheartedly as a unit, as a culture, as a world. And so what were you looking at? Did you like that reflection? Or do you recognize yourself? Maybe you're brand new. Maybe you need to be brand new. So when you go back out into the world, the only way to figure out where you stand in relation to yourself and others is to ask questions. It's the only way, because it lets someone else know that you're interested in them, and then they become interested in you. And before you know it, you're tossing stories around about tuna melts
which is one of my favorite sandwiches.
Yes, me. That's my favorite sandwich. That's my favorite. That's my favorite sandwich.
It might be our East Coast thing. It might be our East Coast thing.
But
I gotta tell
I
you,
like I like a Godfather sandwich too. You know, like all of the Italian meats, provolone.
Oh yeah,
you
that's
know.
definitely East Coast. Oh, that's definitely. So Matt, what I want to know, I want to go back a little bit to explore. So, what do you think, in your own estimation, what happened to what a man is? What if you had to? Maybe a better way to put it is, today's man. Define today's man as we. I think we would have a consensus of some sense. What's viewed as today's man, and then we'll discuss comparatively speaking to yesterday's man. So today's man is what, as you see it? Who?
Okay. I'm an interesting person to ask this question because I'm all over the spectrum of masculinity. I'm a RuPaul's Drag Race winner, quite literally. I'm a straight man, but I was asked to be on that show in season 3, I believe, and I won an episode of that show where they turned straight professional athletes into drag queens, and they competed against each other, and I won. I had never done drag before.
You won.
I won the episode. My drag name is Fuchsia Luzon.
Oh, Matty, that's a great name. I didn't know that element.
Yeah, so that's just kind of an entry level to my experience as a man. I'm open enough with my masculinity to try anything out that will help me explore my humanity, right? And I think that's where a lot of men get lost. They're fearful that they might be seen as effeminate or even gay, as if it's a negative thing, but it isn't. I think that we live in a coastal progressive town here in California, so our vantage point into this question based on proximity is more open and aware than, say, someone who's living in the middle of the country. And that's not their fault that they live there, right? I would say that there is a polarization of men today. I think that there are men like myself that are comfortable in their masculinity to be open, vulnerable, and aware. And then there are the men that, let's say there's a mechanic somewhere in Omaha, Nebraska, that's been living in the same town his whole life, which is fine and wonderful. Every once in a while I yearn for an existence like that, but I chose a different path. But that person has a pub that they go to every week on the same day where they play darts and they have 2 or 3 beers, and they just maybe if someone asks them how they're doing, they say they're doing fine, but then you hear a sigh. I think that that almost blue collar middle American man may not really be asked to share their experience more as frequently as someone like me or you, just by nature of proximity to progressive thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's a polarization. I do think that obviously since this last election, there's been more of an openness to be more masculine. I keep saying the word stoic, but I think I would just say straight white American male. I think that is kind of celebrated, right? Fine.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would like to introduce is a way to grow without using aggressive feelings. I would
elaborate, if you don't mind. Elaborate a little further on, without using aggressive feelings. I think
that Andrew Tate has gotten a following, and he's brought a lot of young men into the fold about how to succeed, how not to be broke. He's got a school where he, claims to teach thousands, if not millions, of young men how to succeed in life. Okay. And all those people made the choice to go into that school. I think there's more than one way to skin a cat, if that's the right phrase. I think that
Yes.
there's other ways to succeed in life. I think that there's additional ways to succeed in life without really just conquering your finances and getting the girl or boy of your dreams or driving the expensive car. Those aren't even band-aids. Those aren't even ways to truly fix your life. It's just social proof that you've amassed some money and that you are a stable adult doing right by your experience, so on and so forth. I just think that there's some layers missing there. I just think that, I really think that it is worth sharing. I think brotherhood is something that Andrew Tate talks a lot about because he's got a brother that he lives with, that he loves, that he praises. They praise each other. And the two of them, have amassed a huge following and a lot of wealth and some controversy. But when I started seeing the kinds of stuff that they were doing and pushing out there, I'm like, I think there's another way to do this. Or there's, in addition to this, if people want to go that route, I think we should add in some of the vulnerability. And I think I'm not talking meditation, journaling, et cetera, which that stuff works as well. I'm talking quite literally sharing stuff. Like, for example, here's a question. What gifts do you give yourself that make you look and feel your best? Just a simple question. That answer is this shirt. I bought this shirt for myself a couple of months ago, and it makes me feel comfortable in public because I'm very comfortable in this shirt. How often do you think about these kinds of things? How do you balance your personal and professional life? Well, when you and I are done here, my son is in the other room. We're going to go grab a cheeseburger, and that's going to make me feel like I'm engaging with my personal life appropriately. These are just questions that I think are essential. And in asking them, in sharing, you feel like the load of your life is less. And as a man, as I stated, it's just very difficult to be a man today. There's a lot going on the news.
It really is.
In our hearts, in our heads. I think a lot of men are walking around with guilt, right? And you don't necessarily.
Let's unpack that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Why are men walking around with guilt today? In your summation, why do we have guilt? Now, I can give my thoughts. I'm curious about your thoughts.
I was raised Catholic. I'm Irish Catholic. Mm-hmm. I mean, almost every page of that doctrine guides you towards some level of guilt so you can repent for it. That's my answer to that. I was brought up in an environment where guilt was commonplace. And it was kind of just like, yeah, you should be feeling guilty right now so that you can get into heaven and, acknowledge that guilt, repent for it, and move on. I think a lot of men feel guilty about some of the choices they've made, whether it be they feel like they gave up on their dreams to start a family, so they have personal guilt about that, or they feel guilt about certain directions their life has gone in, things they haven't achieved. There's just this quiet hum of guilt that I think a lot of men are carrying around. And let's talk about gay men for a second. My best friend is a gay man. My best friend is a gay black man who's a wonderful, wonderful human being, extremely artistic. But what I understand is that a lot of gay men are walking around with shame based on who they are and how they feel. And a lot of them have been ostracized by the towns they grew up in, the families they grew up with, and in their peer group. Now, times have changed, right? Things have actually, the needle has moved in that arena slightly, and then it's been moved back a couple of dials as well. So I think that, there's just more television shows about gay stories and other stories, in the LGBTQ plus spectrum, acronym rather. So I think that there's a certain level of shame that goes unspoken about, and shame manifests in all kinds of ways, in risky behavior, in self-loathing, in addiction, and I think guilt is something that we just quietly walk around with, whether you're gay or straight, black or white. I think that being a man, you just kind of embedded with a silent guilt.
So guilt is somewhat born into us, somewhat if I'm hearing you correctly, is somewhat in our DNA, that we're born as little boys. And even if we have great parents, we have an immediate guilt that comes upon us as a result of some of the DNA.
Mm-hmm.
So now, where does this fit in? Because I think that our current times, men carry the silent guilt, as you said. I think that's very true. But I think culturally, there's been an influence that men carry extra weight of not being man enough or being too soft enough. And I think there is a confusion for men to feel in a safe space. Unlike what you and I are talking about, we can see that a couple of us are trying to provide safe spaces, but a good number of men don't have the brotherhood or the relationships to feel they have a safe space just to be in their own presentation of masculinity. So what I'm trying to feel the answer for is the guilt just comes from a number of ways. And what we're trying to do by the Gents journey is to say, here's a safe space. The guilt, where no matter where it comes from, here's building a community so you don't have to carry that guilt always. Is that part of the objective?
That is part of the objective, but it's called the journey deck because
journey deck. Forgive me.
No, the brand, the company is Gents Journey, but the actual product is called the Journey Deck. And if you go to gentsjourney.co, we're starting to provide all kinds of literature. We also have a Substack, and there's going to be courses that you can take, fun things that you can do. Now, you and I are talking about a deep, deep, deep topic. I do think that we're taking the mask off of masculinity here.
And what does that mean? Elaborate on that just a bit.
I would quite simply just allowing
taking the mask off.
Taking that stoic mask off and allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to share your story. To sit across from another person, whether they're a stranger or not, or an old friend, and feeling safe enough to be seen. I think a lot of people lack the feeling of being seen and heard. And this is a way that we can create moments that create friends where two or more people can feel seen and allow others to feel seen. And these questions, the answers are ever changing. I bring this thing with me everywhere. Every time someone asks me one of my own questions, I have a different answer because every day my experience really does affect my moment. And yes, I feel like, we're carrying around this secret guilt, but we're carrying around years of life on this planet. There's so many things that we forget about. There's so many things we forget to appreciate. And in telling stories, like, oh man, I totally remember that. One of the questions in our deck is, if you could go back to one summer and re-experience it, what summer would that be?
Great question.
It's a great question. My buddy Joe that I grew up with unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, but he owned this boat. And on my 29th year, in my 29th summer, we lived on that boat for a summer. Just, friends from high school that were listening to music, going out on the Great South Bay of Long Island, between Long Island and Fire Island, and having the best time ever. And that's my answer to that question. Every man has a story like that, right? And,
yes.
Every man's got a favorite summer, whether it was a summer with a brother or whatnot. And, and how often do we stop as men and think about the happiest moments in our life? And
we don't. We don't.
Yeah. And how often do we do that with each other? We don't do that with each other either. Are you married? Are you married?
I'm divorced, but I will say this. I can say I've been blessed, Brother Matt, that we've cultivated, my brethren, my best friends, in those years, we've cultivated a relationship to be there in support of how we speak to each other. We all have children, how we communicate to each other, and holding each other accountable. And then sometimes, even if we haven't spoken in a month or two, and we go through those phases, but we made a commitment. And I'm glad to say, with my buddy Christopher, my buddy Dennis, my buddy Tim, Coy, we've cultivated this thing that it can be 2:00 in the morning or it can be 6 months later. But if you reach out, I'm going to be there for you. So I've had the privilege of having some of that. And I can also say, which is one of the reasons why I'm so privileged to have you here, growing up, I did have a group of male mentors that were within my father's range, that they spanned the, the idea of what the man is. And they were participants in me understanding how to love as a man, love your wife, love your children, love your country, and be a participant, but that your brethren will be there for you. Now, it's not to say I didn't go with moments where I definitely felt in my own self, because I think this is, we as men, we have this battle within ourselves where, oh, I don't know if I can share that. They're not going to see me as strong. And I think sometimes that's the conversational piece that we as men are, which I'm hoping with your cards that we can help bridge some of that, but we don't feel safety to say, let me share that I'm in this rough time right now, and I don't know how to reach that out because I don't want them to see it as weaker. That's some of the conversation I think we should engage in. And I'll even go as far as say this, both of us being from Long Island, we New Yorkers, and I find it with my Chicago dudes and my New Jersey cats and even Boston dudes. On the East Coast, we guys, this is probably going to get me a little bit in trouble, but we have a different way that we look at how we talk to our brothers, where we're there for each other, than the West Coast. Mm-hmm. And I do find some of the men's idealisms as far as that. And I'm a total Californianite too. So when I go home to New York, they say, you're too Californianized. So yes. So I do find there are some regional differences in how brethren show up for each other. So on the East Coast, we have a different kind of thing, like, yo, MF, what's up? What you doing, man? We have a different.
Well, we also make fun of each other. You know what I'm saying?
In support of one another. In support,
yeah. On the East Coast, if you're not making fun of your friend to their face in front of your other friends, you're not friends.
Yes.
You know, the poking. And you know what? On the West Coast, you're right. That isn't really something that, like, you get looked at very strange if you start engaging.
It's a different vibe.
It's a different.
Yes.
It's a totally different vibe. I just want to go back a little bit. Here's the point. We're told that via the media, via the past, via the decades previous to this, we're told that sharing doesn't make you stronger. Going through those moments, having those brothers that you have that you can share with, and sharing with them in both your moments of joy or strife, that makes you stronger. Because you know, if you're fighting in a platoon, you're only as good as the people around you. Wolves travel in packs, and I think that we have a lot of fun in our 20s. We go out, we try and meet people, we have a couple of beverages, or we don't, but we just go out socially in an effort to have fun. You know, after college, if you move to a city and you just, you know, you're out there just getting your feet wet, yeah, you're having fun and whatnot. But then once you get into like your early 30s to mid 30s, whether or not you settle down or not and start a family, the act of having fun with your mate, it's a dying art. I remember asking my father, who worked on Wall Street for 30 years, where are your friends one afternoon? And looking back on that, I probably hurt his feelings because he worked so hard Monday through Friday, and he did yard work on the weekends, and he tried taking us out on his boat, and I didn't appreciate it. And I wish as a child I did more, because he worked so hard for these things. But I remember I asked him once, and I knew he had friends he grew up with. They would come to barbecues once a summer. And he said he had work friends in New York City that I'm sure adored him. And he was the kind of guy that when he walked into a room, the room lit up, you know. Now he's kind of hobbling around because he's complaining about his knee because he thinks the world is ending, but he's just getting older, which is why I stretch every day. But I remember asking him.
Matty, let's go back to, so the world is ending pretty quickly, so he must stretch as often as possible.
Yeah, we need to stretch. We need to be mobile. We need to be agile. We need to touch our toes. You need to be able to, to feel that you are able to move, because you're only as good as as much as you can move. If you're not mobile, you're not moving.
Right.
So anyway, when you get into your 30s, the friendship, even new friendship, I make it a point. My best friend now is he's been my best friend for the last 4 years. I met him 4 years ago, and he's my best friend now. Because I went out and looked for him. I was like, my friends were getting, my friends are moving away. A lot of people left LA. And as a man, they made a movie called I Love You, Man, with Jason Segel
and Paul Rudd. Great
and they
movie.
it's wonderful. It's about making a dude friend in Los Angeles and it's based on a true story, I believe. It's hard to make male friends in this town. I have more female friends than I have male friends. And I think making new friends is a dying art. I have an 11-year-old son in the other room. He's the most friendly human I know. He walks into a room and he just makes friends. They come right up to him. I was not like that as a kid. I was made fun of. I was obese, cross-eyed. I had every learning disability you could name. It was not easy for me to make friends at all. I was bullied at every single turn for all of these reasons. But I had a couple of friends that I still have to this day. And once I realized that there's always people out there that will appreciate you if you just put yourself out there. And making new friends is more than just very important for the culture of humans to move forward peacefully. It's important to your experience, because without that, you're alone. And yes. Absolutely no one should be alone. I walked home from West Hollywood to Hollywood last night by myself with this deck of cards, and I made 3 friends. One was a really funny older woman who was in her 70s, about to go out to dinner, and she had a New York accent, and we started talking. I gave her one of these cards, and she found it to be amazing, and we kind of just laughed on the street. I think that everyone deserves to feel less alone, and you never know what the person walking next to you is going through. And I would venture to say that they're on some level, they're carrying something with them they need to get off their chest. And maybe that's just simply the act of sharing a moment with a stranger. Doesn't mean you have to talk about your parents' divorce, or the fact that you got divorced, or the fact that you didn't get the job promotion that you want. Sometimes you just want to tell someone that you're here too. And having a conversation with them about anything can really heal your experience. This is a town of bubbles. You're in your car bubble, your friend bubble, your job bubble, your family bubble, your neighborhood bubble. Pop the bubble, get out. Find your new tribe. They're out there. I actively seek it. This is the thing I'm most passionate about. I'm in 3 movies right now. All of them are number 1. I love the fact that I'm an artist still after all this time, but that's my skill set. This right here, this deck of cards, this brand, this is my purpose, because I came from a place where I was born into a world where no one wanted to be my friend because they thought of me a certain way based on my appearance and my abilities. And so I changed all of that by just talking to as many people as I could. And there's so many beautiful stories about the friendships in my life. I look for strays. I have an actual cat named Oreo who's a stray cat. We found him 3 weeks old.
I have a dog named Oreo. I have my dog named Oreo.
You have a dog named Oreo.
She was adopted, and she was a stray. And
I'm looking for strays. I'm looking for strays.
I am too. Always.
That's the secret sauce of my life.
Oh yeah. And I want to say this too. I think you point out one of the areas in the program that I saw that mentions men and loneliness, and I think that's an extremely important element of conversations, because again, even in today's man, I definitely think it's gotten a lot easier for men to mention their isolationism and or the feeling of that. I think it's gotten a little more comfortable for that, but we still have a dim light shown upon men that are in searching for help and feeling isolated or lonely. So in making friends, for me, same thing. I was bullied as a kid. They used to call my brother and I, Norm, they would call us the 10. I was the round circle and he was the straight number one.
Oh my God. I mean, I'll be honest. That's a little funny, but I get it.
Matty, it's totally funny. I laugh about it now. But in talking about the bullying, and then plus we were adopted. And so we had all the bullying that could go on.
Yeah, of course.
My brother and I, we took it and it helped us become closer for a long time. But they used to say, look at that 10 going down the street. And I had Don King hair on this side. And then I had my straight hair or nappy hair on this side. And I would walk around looking like a basketball. My brother was the pencil. And it was one of the ways, because he always had the greatest sense of humor. So he used to tell us jokes and we would just get over saying, oh, we're a 10. I guess that means we're good looking together. So
and it's and we're both an even number and an odd number.
Yes. And we took it to formulate friendships. Now, for me, like you, I look for strays. And part of my thing was my dad just had this incredible sense of already radiating warmth. He wanted men to feel a sense of warmth, and he created brotherhood environments. So for me, even though they were teasing my brother and I sought to say, I'm going to show what my dad showed. There's no dude he meets as a stranger, and you have to step out on some of that, even if you get the hurt back. But I know that with some of my brethren, and even why I'm glad we're having this conversation, we as men, we don't have comfort zones to say, I'm just going to make friends. And so that's why your cards and this journey and the 52 deck are so valuable, because it says take an opportunity and a chance to do this. But I think that's what we're hoping to cultivate, is that men can just say, I am just going to go out and reach for friendships. So give us some examples on when you give out the cards, the follow-up conversation, or go into that a little. Oh, I lost your sound, Matty. Matty,
you got me there?
There we go.
Sorry. I have a part-time job that I work in West Hollywood. And there was a man that I worked with for 3 months who was quiet. And it appeared that he had an ego, right? And I have an ego as well. But, we were both kind of wearing our egos on our sleeve.
As we do.
As we do. But we had about an hour before this event was starting where I was like, man, maybe I should break out the deck with this guy. And I did. And the question that came out was, what don't people get about you? That was the question.
Oh, that's a great question, brother. That's such a great, and see, if we can pause there for a second, we as men don't get that question. Mm-hmm. We get labeled or tagged on what people suppose they think they know about us, but we don't get asked that question where we can actually answer it. So I'm loving that you engaged in this.
And his answer really surprised me because he thought about it for a second. He said, people think that I have it all together, that I know what's going on, that I'm keeping this all together in a beautiful way. He's a good looking guy, seemingly successful, in his own way, and self-made. But he said, I wake up scared every day. I wake up scared of, leaving the house. I have OCD. I'm meticulous. He went down the rabbit hole of letting me know all of the stuff that he felt fearful of very quickly. I never thought that this man was ever going to share anything like that with me, and
yes.
And people, and alternatively, he asked me the same question. And my answer was that people don't get that I actually like being serious, because I'm kind of known as like the jovial prankster, the kind of guy that's always kind of stirring the pot, trying to make things funnier, and I'm pranking people and doing silly things. But I'm also a very serious person. And by the end of that conversation, I texted my business partners, my co-founders. I just made a friend with the deck. Like, it was right around the time we launched. So I was just taking it out in public with me. And I was like, I just made my first new friend with our product. And this man and I have hung out every other week for the last 5 months. That's one experience. And I asked that man about the sandwich, and I got his story. And here's another question that I've always loved, that for some reason, anytime it comes up when I ask people, it really opens up a dialogue.
I'm so glad we're going to hear, and I would like to also, I'm very curious to hear what your thoughts are on women's role in today's men.
Oh, that's a great question. A lot of men put a lot of the burden on their partner. A lot of men think that their wife or partner or girlfriend or boyfriend or husband, is their sounding board, is their everything. That's a huge amount of stuff to just put on one person's shoulders. And it's not right for your partner, and it's not right for you. And that's why you need a group of friends. That's why you need a campfire to gather around, figuratively or literally, to commune and converse and to share. Because if your partner is the sounding board and the everything in regards to the stuff that you want to share, that's not healthy for you or that person. It's too heavy. You should be able to feel safe enough to share with your partner. Don't get me wrong. Otherwise, they shouldn't be your partner. But you should be able to share with your friends as well. And I think that the role of women in this has been for a very long time important. I think a woman's appreciation and love for their partner, or even their brother for that matter. I have a twin sister. Her name is Rebecca. And growing up, she was the alpha of the two of us. She was the one that was the boss. She wanted to take dance classes. I had to go with her. She wanted to have a sweet 16 at a roller rink. I was lacing up my rollerblades. She was the one that was in charge. I always looked up to women, and I'm not saying that's negative, but my perspective of it is I was born at the same time as a girl who was my sister, who I let kind of lead for most of my childhood. I was very happy to be led by her because she was and is very smart. But the roles have slightly reversed in our relationship, and I guess we're basically equals. We're definitely equals now in regards to how we respect each other's minds and whatnot. She probably always did. I just didn't feel safe enough to share around her, and now we're in a place where I'm extremely comfortable sharing with her.
Yes.
I think universally, the role of women in today's masculinity, get off of Instagram. None of that stuff is real. What people are saying in terms of like relationship advice and all that stuff, it really is just noise, because you only learn when you're working. Like someone was telling me, like even as an actor, they were like, should I get back into classes? Sure, it's cool to sharpen your blades if you're a chef, but you really learn the most while you're actually working. So you should really try and work as much as possible. And I think
that's a great point.
I think that is where people fail a lot of contemporary traditional relationships. I feel like they're letting other people tell them what they should be experiencing, and they're scared. They're too scared to do it themselves. I just got into a relationship. It's been a couple of years since my last relationship, and I'm scared, but I'm also really excited. And I'm going to stay off of social media in regards to my relationship, because I want to experience this firsthand and use the things that I've learned to my benefit. And I'm excited about it, and I'm very lucky and at the same time. But I think the partner that you choose is extremely important, and they don't tell us that enough. They tell you to look for happily ever after, but they don't tell you how to make that work. They didn't tell me.
Yes.
They did not tell me. So I think that the role of women in today's society in regards to masculinity is just as important as masculinity itself. And I think that it is equal if you just turn off social media. I feel like the experience is mutual. I feel like how you respect a woman or how a woman respects you, I think it goes across the board. It doesn't matter what the sexes are. I feel like what you give is what you get, right? What you give is what you get, and hard work pays off. And I think a lot of people don't want to do the hard work. So I think that women are just as important as men for different and similar reasons. And I think that social media is bombarding the interpersonal romantic experience.
So, do women play a role in defining who today's man is? Because
I think so. I think a reason I keep bringing up social media, it's like I've seen a lot of women influencers say stuff like, "I want a man to lead me. I want to feel like that person is in complete control, and I just want to, have my hand held and to be brought somewhere and to be made to feel like I'm safe." Now, the safety part of that is understandable. I totally get that. You want to feel safe around your partner, and you want to feel safe in your world or because of your partner, male or female. But I think that there is an emphasis for at least on social media, from what I'm seeing, of women saying the man should be this, the man should be this, the man should be this. And I just think that today all bets are off. The rule books have changed. We are a brand new culture. Like we have a clean slate of experience after the pandemic. No one really knows what to do next. The only way to do things is experience things. And I think people are terrified of experiencing new things, like a new friendship or even a new relationship,
It's interesting that we tagged into this because, my ex-wife and I, she is one of my favorite people now. So we didn't stay married as I would have liked us to, because I had this idea set up of seeing my parents be married 62 years before my mom passed away and my dad 2 years later. But in seeing that, I wanted to hold on to that because that was the man's thing to do, and I was going to stay married. But we couldn't do it in our young years until we both had matured and found, I think in our generation, yours and mine, manhood and womanhood, we really began to get lost in the translation of what those means. And that's why this is a valuable conversation you and I are having, and why I've been wanting to examine this issue is, so what do those definitions look like now as we're trying to find this common place, this common ground to discuss who are we in that? And so, I wonder if you're finding the same thing. So the masculine identity, we should be feeling that where we find that is in the community support of our brethren and the reflection that our brethren show us, and it's individualistically based now. So masculinity is not defined by the traditional roles we had before. It's in form of community and knowing we're providing, we're being the best men that we can, and we're doing everything we can. And then as women go, as the other portion of our humanity, their definition or how their expectations of us and how men are supposed to be, we don't have to necessarily pay attention to the social media words they're saying, but pay attention to the conversations we're having with women that are assisting us, where we're both trying to rediscover who this new man is and who this new woman is. Is that where we're at? Is that what I'm understanding?
I think that's where we're at. Right. And even just you and I having this conversation is proof that that's where we're at. We're just intuitive enough with our experiences to realize that there's some gaps in the conversation, or just a lack thereof of conversation. My son is 11.
Maybe that's what we're learning. Maybe that's it. The gaps. Maybe we're trying to figure out the gaps. What are the gaps, and how to bridge the gaps? Or correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong at all. You're not. I think this card deck is proof that there was a gap. There's no other product out there geared specifically towards men. This says on the box, conversation cards, and then for men. It's underlined. And yeah, we've gotten some pushback from people that would say, why is this just for men? Why is this not inclusive? And I say, look, I actually use this card deck with everybody, right? Because I want to spread the word, because everyone's got a brother or a husband or an uncle that could benefit from this. And sharing in general is extremely important. But this is specifically for men for one reason and one reason only, because we were told that we shouldn't have something like this.
And I'm glad you said that. I like to address that. I think and I know I get a little pushback on this, but it's one of the reasons why I'm glad we're having this conversation. I think it's time that men did have more persons like yourself that are addressing the conversational pieces that men need to have, where we recongregate in a space and we're forming those definitions for ourselves again, or at least supportive of each other in our individual expressions of those. So I do think this is very timely considering the times and our president.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was raised Catholic. I'm no longer Catholic. I am a Christian, I guess. I'm definitely a Christian. I don't really go to a specific Christian church, but Jesus is my homeboy. That's a separate conversation. But what I learned from religion at a young age was communing, right? Every Sunday we got together. The repetition of communion, of getting together with these people, really did build a community. These are people that are still in my life, whether they be the boys that live down the block from me or whatnot. Where we're going as a culture, what we view, what we look to for answers in regards to religion or what have you. I think that there should be other places to commune than, and to share your experiences with one another. And so I think that building a community of like-minded men, I was the odd man out in the group of men that made this company, that put this company together. I was not, at the time, I was not an entrepreneur. I was an artist. Okay. Now I am an entrepreneur. These men helped me grow from not really understanding business at all to understanding business. Every one of these men are extremely stoic, extremely successful. To me, at first, extremely intimidating. But getting under the surface with them, really, really just, peeled back the layers of masculinity and the mask of masculinity to reveal a beautiful group of dudes that are now like best friends, that are never going anywhere, that will always feel comfortable sharing their wins and losses with one another. I did this in my early 40s. Find me 4 other men that have done this in their early 40s right now. It's going to be hard, but not anymore because of the journey deck. I literally just talked to a man that was on a business trip in LA 3 weeks ago, had no idea how successful he was, how much money he had, or the accomplishments that he had made in his life. But I told him about the deck, and I showed him the deck, and I turned my back to him for a little bit because I had something to do. And when I turned around, my phone went off and it said I sold 9 decks on Shopify. Wow. Because this man was like, yes, I get it. Right. So as these seeds are being planted around the world, there's an influencer by the name of Eric Jang. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers, and he asks people questions on the street. I would say he's in the top 10 question askers in the world, period. End of story. And he's taking this deck around the world with him. He's been to Argentina. He's been to Dubai. He's been all over the Middle East, all over Europe with this deck of cards. If you go to his social media, he's using these cards right now. So the seeds of these cards are being planted everywhere. And I came to a realization maybe a month ago with my business partners. I said, we're not selling just cards, guys. We're selling friendship. And friendship takes time and bravery. So in 10 years from now, I'm going to meet dudes that became friends because of this deck of cards, and they're going to tell me stories about their friendships, and it's going to blow my mind. And so I'm so excited. Like I look at America, because most of the cards are being sold domestically right now, but I look at America from a bird's eye view, and I look at all of the states that this deck exists in right now, and I can see little bubbly, one little dot in that state becoming 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, right? And I'm so excited. Just like, let's say Mark Zuckerberg, when he was getting all these people to get into Facebook, was probably very excited when it started to take off for a lot of different reasons. For a lot of obvious reasons. But this is a little bit of a slower thing because that's social media and can grow a lot faster now than it could in the beginning. But what we're doing is bringing back plain and simple handshake icebreaker conversations. just like you would see in the movies of yesteryear, just like you would experience before when your phone was still attached to your wall, you know.
If people remember that.
Yeah, I'm not even just saying these things for the sake of nostalgia, which is potent.
For sure.
I'm saying it because I keep my eyes open when I walk around the street, and I'm looking for one thing and one thing only, and that's a new friend, right?
I like that. Oh, dig it.
Yeah. Even so, I live in Hollywood. I live in the center of Hollywood, California, with my 11-year-old son, who I co-parent with a wonderful woman, and we can get into that as well. But my relationship with her is wonderful, and that journey in and of itself is probably what I feel most successful about, because my parents just failed at getting along after their divorce. Regardless, I walk around LA with my child, and even if there's an unhoused person in my neighborhood, I'm friendly to them. A lot of buddies, they keep a lookout. Sometimes, like, don't go down that street today, Matt. There's some crazy stuff going on down there. Like, I have boots on the ground in this town everywhere I go, because I like feeling like I exist. And the one thing that makes me feel the most alive is friends. And a lot of people, they just Netflix, Paramount Plus, Amazon Prime. They work all day, they eat their meal, they turn on one of those, and they look to experience life through a television show or a movie, which is entertainment, and you deserve it. But you also deserve a hug. And whether that be a literal hug or a hug via a conversation with a new person. So if you're out there, right? If you're out there, and we're at the beginning of summer, right? Barbecues, the beach, vacations. You can bring this wherever you want, and you'll make a new friend every time you take it out of your pocket. It's a powerful tool. And just like a buzzsaw is a powerful tool, it's going to take a little training, but it's going to feel strange at first. But I guarantee once you have that one conversation with that new person that you didn't expect, you're going to be addicted to this. And I'm not just trying to sell this product, right?
I've seen them. I know how great they are.
Yeah, I'm trying to change the world with 3 other wonderful dudes whose lives were changed by the conversations that we had. And we're stronger men. We're stronger business owners. We're stronger partners. We're better decision makers. And we're having fun. Look, we don't know how much more time we have anytime we wake up, right? It could all be over in a second. But we don't know how much more time we have at all, any of us. So have some fun, right? And the only way to have fun is to do it with other people. You can have a little bit of fun by yourself, but you could have a lot of fun with a buddy. And I just want to be your buddy, and I want to help you make buddies. And it's not cheesy or feminine or bad. Not that being feminine is bad. What I'm saying is this is self-help without having, it's not yah. Like, it's like, you know, a lot of people take yoga. A lot of people buy crystals. A lot of people do ayahuasca. Your journey is your journey. I'm just presenting a real practical way to do things. That's not like some guru in a room, you know, burning incense. What I'm trying to do is just provide, like, for lack of a better explanation, a broy way to commune.
And you couldn't have said it better, because I think, again, that is the culmination, what we're trying to do. And my listeners and thousands of people who know me through the years, my whole thing has always been, if you want a hug, I'm here. I want to share more one love. And then typically at the end of the broadcast, I always say the revolution we want is a love-evolution, a revolution of love. And I am in full support, especially when it comes to my brethren, to feel that we have a tool to make more friends. And this is the positivity we need, not only for America, but for our world today. And I think men are the backbone of that, in addition to our companions, our women, but men are the backbone to reestablishing some of that connectivity. That's my goal by having you on the program today.
I really appreciate it, you know, and it can be a risky conversation, right? Because people are going to have opinions, but this is important. Like this is
Absolutely.
this is very, I am not trying to exclude everybody. I'm just trying to I'm trying to include for the first time men in universally to have a safe, approachable, and practical way to feel less alone. And there's nothing better than talking about sandwiches with a stranger. You know,
Oh, that's the best way to even put that too. To talk about sandwiches with a stranger. It's also very much an East Coast thing too. Because in California, it wouldn't be a sandwich. They would be talking about some other stuff.
Yeah, like, well, if you want to talk about the deep stuff, you're allowed to. If you want to talk about the life stuff, you're allowed to. If you want, whether you're 13, 23, 33, 43, or 73, you have lived a life of importance. You might not feel like it, but the second you start talking about it, you realize, holy shit, I've lived a pretty deep life with a lot of cool moments. And it's time to A, remember those things, B, celebrate them, and C, feel safe enough to talk about them with old and new friends.
Matty, I couldn't think of a better place to end this particular broadcast, but there's plenty of things I think we need to discuss more because I just found this so refreshing. And for my brethren, this particular interview is dedicated to them. And I want more people to know where to contact you at and reach out for this. Please give the address again, an email where they can reach you for more information about the Gents journey and the deck of cards. And what
sure. Our primary URL is Gents Journey. That's GENTS journey.co. That's .co. And you can join the community there. If bare minimum, put your email in and you'll get a lot of amazing free words of wisdom, encouragement, friendship, etc. If you'd like to purchase the deck, you can do that. But we're just putting a community together first. We're bringing people together, and we're growing by the hundreds at this point, and we'd love to have you on board. And I'm not just trying to sell a product or get you to subscribe to something. I want to meet you, and I'd like to be your friend. And I'm here for you, and so are my partners, and so are the rest of the brotherhood that we are creating. And Gents Journey Co. on Instagram. You could reach us via email on our website specifically, but the email is gentsjourneyco@gmail.com. And my personal Instagram is Matty P. McManus @gmail.com. That's MATTYP as in Peter, McManus. That's MCMANUS @gmail. That's my Instagram handle. I got interrupted because you told me about you and your brother having the 10 moniker. But if you just if you just listen to me spell my last name. If you listen to me spell my last name, the last four letters of my last name spell anus. So that was what that's what my friends back in New York used to reference when I was a kid.
I didn't see that one coming, dude.
Yeah, kids can be lethal. They find that one thing about your experience, and they push it on you. But I'm just
Matty. Oh man. I didn't see that one coming, Cat.
Yeah, I did all too many times as a child. But it's a good time to have a fun time, and putting something in your pocket that allows you to smile more frequently is always a good thing. It's always a good thing. And so this is Matt McManus live and direct from Los Angeles, California, telling you that you're worth knowing me and I'm worth knowing you. And we got a place for you to go to make that all happen. And I really, truly appreciate, Seth, you having me. By the way, Seth is the name of one of my childhood best friends. But I appreciate you having me today, and that my close friend John, who is like my older brother in Los Angeles, he put us together. And we could spend a whole episode talking about my relationship with him, because he was the gateway drug to all of the amazing things that I've experienced in Los Angeles.
No, he's a tremendous cat. And actually, we do need to schedule another time to come in, because there's some important issues that John is discussing, as well, as far as work leaving California and the exodus and of employment in the entertainment industry. So I'd like to have you back on again, Matty, so we can discuss some of those things, because John is a cool cat and has really been on the forefront on some of these particular issues.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. There's a lot that we can talk about. What you're doing is extremely. You're open-minded, and your program and your mind are all very important. And I truly appreciate you bringing me into the fold, my friend.
Matty, you are a new brother, and there's some stuff I want to talk to you off camera as well. So I am very interested in proceeding with some of the conversation on Gent's journey. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for having Matty McManus and oh no,
don't say it.
No, oh, Matthew, I am so pleased to have you here with us. I am just looking forward to all the stuff in the future that we're going to do, and I'm looking forward to getting my cards as well. I have mentioned that there is a definite conversation that we men are having today that is unlike the one we've had the last few years, and Matty McManus is on the forefront of that conversation and that dialogue. We are brethren gathered here today in these forms of these human bodies, where we are trying to understand better how to be better of ourselves. And this is one of those steps with the Gents card and the journey. And also, most important, that Matty has mentioned, in developing new friendships. We're here, brethren. We support you, and we see you and recognize you. And the brethren's journey begins right here today in this conversation with Matty McManus and his cards. And the conversation continues. Until next time, Maker's Bar, your boy Seth Garu Baxter, where we're creating 1 million leaders today for tomorrow. Here's one of those steps, gentlemen. Join us on this journey to create more leaders. Matty, thank you, good brother. I'm looking forward to speaking to you some more.
I'm here for you, buddy.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Peace.